Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Well said. Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to invite Recreation and Parks up for a brief moment in relation to item 7, since we're covering all these.
Just come get a seat, guys.
So this is in relation to the El Nino Emergency Protocol, and this is the trigger as a very last resort. It's increasingly unlikely that we'll trigger this $2.1 million that we're talking about in item 7 here. But it is in line with following the city charter in relation to recreation and parks facilities being a last resort for the assistance of homeless individuals in the case of a catastrophe. And that's why I wanted you to just kind of talk a little bit about that and just kind of explain for the record what this is all about. And then I'm going to just have one question for you. Please.
Thank you, Councilman. Kevin Regan, Assistant General Manager, Department of Recreation and Parks, and I have with me Jimmy Kim, who's with Recreation and Parks Emergency Management Section. So in response to the El Nino situation, expected heavy rains and low temperatures, the Department of Recreation and Parks, in collaboration with Council and the Mayor's Office, developed a plan with Emergency Management Department, LASA, CAO, and others to be able to activate recreation and park shelters in the event that they're needed in these sustained inclement weather periods. So essentially what happens is there's this, it's sort of an augmented shelter program. There's sheltering taking place already in these periods of heavy rain or cold. If those shelters fill up, then the county also has an activation. They're really like the second echelon. So county has opened parks and armories. That has happened a couple of times so far this winter. If the county's capacity starts to reach 80%, then Recreation and Parks would become ready for activation. And we have identified 5 shelters that meet ADA standards and other requirements for this type of sheltering activity. So those shelters are on standby. And if we have a period of heavy rain, very low temperatures over a sustained period of time, if the county shelters, if the LASA shelters and then the county shelters fill up, Recreation and Parks Department for the city is ready to stand up 5 shelters. When that happens, just so the council is aware, the normal activities at that recreation center would stop, and it would shift to complete sheltering operations. LASA would be the service provider, so really LASA would be doing all the intake of the various clients, dealing with the bedding, feeding, medical care, psychological issues, security, etc. Recreation and Parks would be providing the buildings, making sure the physical plant is operating properly, and then providing some maintenance during the activation. At the end of the activation, there would be a period of time to completely clean the rec center before it returns to normal operations, and that's really how the plan works.
Thank you. Jimmy, did you want to add anything?
I think the question, Jimmy Kim, Rec and Parks Emergency Management Coordinator, I believe the question was about what the department's role is in a local emergency. So under the city charter, per the administrative code, the Department of Recreation and Parks, we are the chief of the Public Welfare and Sheltering Branch of the Emergency Operations Board. And as such, we are designated as the department that will provide emergency shelters during local emergencies for people that are rendered homeless. So definitely that is what we do in the department.
Thank you. And colleagues, I just want to reiterate that Recreation and Parks is fully prepared. They're working very closely with the Emergency Management Department and LASA should this last resort trigger. It's hard to believe we're talking about it when it's 90 degrees outside and sunny, and all of us want to be at the beach during El Nino, but you never know. March could bring some showers, so we'll be prepared. And it's my understanding that a committee will be formed in terms of how to disperse this $2.1 million, made up of CLA, CAO, Mayor's Office, City Council President's Office, I believe. Is that right?
The chair of.
Chair. Okay. Chair of Homeless. Thank you. And so it's that body that will decide on exactly the disbursement of those funds should it trigger. And of course, it's going to be of great concern on making sure that money is well spent. But we'll all be part of that conversation. So thank you for the explanation.
Mr. Bloomfield.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to echo all of my colleagues in thanking all of you for the hard work in putting this together. It's nice to see all the work that's been put into this, and I know that the real work is ahead of us as we sort of go through the implementation and figuring it out, and sort of the public interaction that's going to have to come with some of the more difficult elements in terms of density and other issues that we're going to have to be discussing in our communities to make real and to get that priority, whether it's through the ballot or something else, ensconced into law or getting people to vote for it. One thing I think is great about just today about having the strategy, and I wanted to get you to talk about it, has to do with grants. We've been looking at grants in my committee, and one of the things we've talking to different department and general managers is that when there's a comprehensive strategy, that often helps us go out and get more grants. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how this strategy, may influence or assist us in going after additional state, federal, or other grants to help us in this initiative?
Well, I think the first thing is that it is comprehensive and it's consistent with federal guidelines on homelessness, and it hits a lot of the priorities that the federal government has established on addressing homelessness on a national level. We've all seen that the state is taking up how they could invest in this area, and part of their consideration is consistent with what we've laid out in terms of investing in housing, both through a voucher program as well as building permanent supportive housing. And then I've spoken to foundations in particular who have expressed a tremendous amount of interest in helping fund the establishment of housing, particularly for purposes of acquisition and for rehabbing existing housing stock. And so with the fact that we now have, through your adoption, a comprehensive strategy, then other state, federal, private foundation could find ways to link and leverage the investment that the city makes.
Good question. Okay, Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you. I know my time run out, but I want to go back to Mr. Williams, 7th and Gaffney, and bring you back to that scenario. Here we have a case of balancing the needs of Mr. Williams with balancing the issue of public safety and public health. I feel what's before us today, of course, we continue to battle these encampments and tents up and down every corner of the city of Los Angeles. And because of the several lawsuits, the city has taken a very hands-off approach the past few years as it relates to the expansion of encampments and excess property in our public spaces. I realize this report focuses on addressing the causes of homelessness, but in order to get the support and buy-in of our housed residents that pay the majority of our taxes, I think we need to we need to recognize that we are working to address the impacts of homelessness and the quality of life issues. So can you share with us what is the strategy to start cleaning up the mix of trash and legitimate personal property on our streets? And 2, has any study been done on how much it would cost to clean up of all excess property over 60-gallon per person limit established by the forthcoming 5611 ordinance, and the amount of time it will take?
Well, there's a number of strategies. As I indicated at the beginning, nearly half of all the strategies seek to address the immediate crisis by building capacity of housing, shelter, as well as investing in the infrastructure of temporary storage, restrooms, creating a mechanism for mobile shelters. But ultimately, what it would take will be connecting Mr. Williams to housing. And at the center of the coordinated entry system is really a philosophy of compassionate persistence. It's this idea that most homeless individuals, when approached at the level that they're at a compassionate but persistent manner, will in fact move into housing if there is a mechanism to lead them there. And so that approach will ultimately help Mr. Williams and the hundreds like him enter housing, as long as that there is a system of a voucher and a program and an individual to carry him through. And so, but while that's being developed, there are a number of strategies to address the quality of life. Now, in terms of your question on the overall cost, we have not made that assessment of what it would take to deal with all the encampments. The protocols that are being worked on today are intended to establish a balanced approach to addressing the needs of the issues of encampments in the community, and balancing them with services, but at the same time making the neighborhoods accessible for the rest of the community.
Great. Sharon?
Combined with that is also a direction to staff to develop and look for additional storage facilities. So to the extent that there is additional funding to provide storage facilities, that actually would reduce the amount of personal belongings that are in the public right away and reduce the need for cleanings. So that's also part of the report back, and LAHSA has already been instructed to report back to you on that.
Appreciate that. Again, it's evident that the most visible problem that we're seeing today in the homelessness are the tents and encampments. And I'm looking forward to moving on the ordinance of 5611. I understand Mr. Harris Dawson and Mr. Weezer will be hearing that item. It came out of Public Works with a couple of recommendations. We'll be hearing that item in the homelessness committee as well. And I appreciate both co-chairs that will be agendizing 5611. And that's, I feel, if we're really going to touch the minds and the hearts of these individuals, we need to get them out of those encampments, get them out of those tents, and get them in contact with the service providers who are working diligently in our streets today in the city of Los Angeles. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to rise to tease out a bit the issue of the encampments and say a few words. There's sort of a sentiment that we have the encampments because of court cases that have left us with the situation. That's actually not true. We have the encampments because we have failed to provide the types of things that we're calling for in the strategy report. The courts have said until we do that, we have to have encampments. We have to let people sleep on the street. The courts have consistently said that we've been failing to step up, and today is where I hope we begin to legitimately step up. We have looked at folks in encampments, and we've heard it, and it's sort of a subtext in many of our conversations, and said they're all service resistant, they don't want help, why are we wasting our time? And the fact of the matter is, I think the courts have pointed this out, that it is no more appropriate to come up with a strategy and solutions for homelessness based on the fact that a small but visible number of people are service resistant than it is to dictate federal funding for cancer research based on the fact that there are a handful of people who refuse to accept chemotherapy or a cancer treatment. And what we have, I think, acknowledged in this report is that we have a role to play in causing people to be service resistant by having shelters that throw you out at 6 in the morning, by having shelters that split you up from your partner if you're opposite sex, by having shelters that put frightened teens in with grizzled older folks, by having shelters that don't let you take in sufficient belongings so that you need to leave them on the street and have them stolen, by having shelters that don't let you bring in an animal that may be your only protection or companionship. We have failed, and we have given folks reason to be service resistant or service reluctant. And one of the things I think we do here in this report is we talk about changing the way our shelters are and turning them more into bridge housing, where they're more welcome centers, so that we acknowledge what our role is in creating service resistance and do what we can to eliminate it so that everybody has the opportunity to avail themselves of the long-term solutions that we're creating. So I wanted to, again, acknowledge that that's a very important part of this plan, and I think it's one of the things that will help it be successful if we muster the will to implement it. Thank you.
Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the members who testified and have been a part of this process. All of us are in a position where the impact of this problem is right in our faces, and so all of us have encampments on one corner or another, under one freeway pass or another, and the voters, frankly, are demanding from us a solution. And one thing you could do is take the scab and put a Band-Aid over the scab and pretend as if the problem's being dealt with. Or you can actually pursue healing so that the whole thing is taken care of, and you don't have to worry that you're just pushing people from one corner to another or from one overpass to the other. And so again, I think this gets us started and gets us going in the right direction. There are a number of amendments that have been circulated that are friendly as far as the chair and I are concerned. And so with that, we ask for and are prepared for a positive vote on this matter.
Okay, I think Mr. Weezar, did you want to? Okay, so you're good. So before we vote, I do want to indicate that there have been amendments. Anything that, and report backs, anything that comes back that has a dollar amount attached to that will be referred to Budget and Finance. Okay, so with that said, Madam Clerk, we vote on item 6 first, or how do you want to proceed?
Yes, Mr. President, Council should first vote on item 6 as amended by motion 6A through 6L.
Okay, then let us open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay, continue. What's next?
Next, Council should vote on items 7 and 14.
Okay, on those items, let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
That brings us where?
Mr. President, the next item is item 5.
Okay, just so people know, the items where it relates to the Homeless and Poverty Committee have been approved. So those items were approved, okay? Now we move to item 5.
Yes, and amending motion 5A has been circulated.
Okay, then let us prepare to vote on item 5. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
15 ayes.
Okay. Good job, people. Good job.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we're going to move on to general public comment. First speaker is Danny, general public comment. Danny, is anyone here? Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
General public comment.
Yeah. Council members and City Attorney in particular, I want to, in the aftermath of Friday's council meeting, particularly to Dion, to keep something in mind from the federal court. It is unconstitutional to restrict speakers from making personal attacks in city council meetings. It chills speech. So Dion, please keep in mind that personal attacks in city council against public figures in one shape or another is constitutional. I want to be very clear that Mr. Wesson and I think Mr. Englander now understand what it's like to expect an apology and not receive one. I am still waiting for mine and my time to be restored so we can go on to other business. Again, keep in mind personal attacks are constitutional. Thank you.
Next speaker, Maureen Chris Halikis. Anyone here by that name? Last name Halikis? I see none. Next speaker is Patricia McAllister, followed by Mr. Walsh.
I was denied my right to speak on number 6 because I think we need a federal investigative audit by the federal government. Now, all of this hullabaloo right here, it's about money. You knew about this homeless problem before I came here and started exposing you. I attended those meetings, the housing committee meetings. I'm a teacher, so when I go into meetings, I'm looking at you like you're a student. This committee was unqualified. They didn't know anything. How do I know? The questions they were asking. I knew more than they knew. And I told them that, and some of them got quiet. They don't know what's going on. Now, all of this money transferring, this is nothing but embezzlement. It's nothing but embezzlement and racketeering. Get ready to start. Your mayor claims he spent $100 million on the homeless, and they're laying on the street. We need an investigation. You're stealing money, I believe, and we want most of you to go to prison. It's a darn shame what you're doing, what you did today, and you hushed me up.
Next speaker is Mr. Walsh, followed by Don Garza.
John Walsh at HollywoodHighlands.org. It's almost empty here because about 250 people have left the room. That is the Poverty Pimp Homeless Coalition. Their nightmare is that homelessness might actually disappear, because if it disappears, they're out of a job. Nobody but Englander for a supervisor, and the Neighborhood Integrity Initiative is passing around. Please sign it. We have, what this will do is stop the myth that you can build rail with huge skyscrapers around them, and everyone will take the subway, and poverty and everything will be eliminated. You saw what it said in the LA Times. Over the last 30 years, there were more people taking bus only 30 years ago or 40 years ago than are taking bus and rail now.
Next speaker is Don Garza, followed by David Cheney.
I don't know what I'm going to talk about right now. I mean, I got about, a minute, but I already know what I'm going to talk about. We need this armory opened up. I warned Jose Huizar in December. I warned Jose Huizar in August of last year. And I'm going to warn you guys again right now. And I'm going to warn Jose Huizar even though he's not in this room. Psychologically, the people on the street don't see any rain. The first night it rains all night long, we're going to have exposure casualties. You do not understand the dynamics of homelessness. You do not understand the dynamics of the people living in the street. If we have another person die of exposure in the street, I'm going to make it my life's work to remind Mr. Huizar that he is negligent and he should be prosecuted for a crime of murder.
Next speaker is David Cheney. He left. Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Eric Previn. Mr. Previn, are you here? Mr. Previn is not in chambers. Next is Candace Graham. Candace Graham, are you here? Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. More than a pleasure being with you. Unfortunately, I've been coming back and forth for about 4 years or more to bring you the news of this calamity before it happened. We had over 85,000 homeless people east of the 10 freeway at that time. Now we have close to 150,000. It is a dramatic difference. Not only are we faced with the grapes of wrath here and more people coming to Los Angeles, which will never be addressed by the homeless issue and the things that are brought forward to you, Hascila, H-C-I-L-A, is under investigation by the FBI. The department, I forgot what the other department is, Camila Harris and those guys. I tried to get you guys to see that, We're asking, we have over 100,000 different property owners, which would greatly solve your problem to be able to help with the housing program here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Oscar Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed, are you here? Followed by Bill Huey. Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Oscar Muhammad. I was denied to speak on item 7 pertaining to the homeless. I was denied speaking. I was discriminated upon. But anyway, William Penn is a black man that the state of Pennsylvania is named behind. William Penn said the people must be governed by God if don't transfer the rule. We should end discrimination in politics. Every God said it is a very, very racist mayor. He shouldn't have no authority over black people. The homeless people in America should have authority over them through the African-American, Muslim, Islamic religious leadership, Imam Wajdi Muhammad. And they got a program called Mars Care in Chicago that if an African-American wants employment, he must come to Chicago to be affiliated with the Mars Care and he can find employment. We should find a way to end poverty in America, especially around the African-American people, though. We need better leadership.
Thank you, sir. Bill Huey, followed by Ira Belgrade.
Good morning, members of the LA City Council. My name is Bill Huey. I'm the president of Fair Housing Coalition. And in all this talk about the homeless today, no one ever said, how did we get here? Where did all these homeless people come from? I can tell you, for the last 15 years, the LA Housing Department has waged war on mom and pop landlords. It's very hard to really maintain a building when you're collecting 1/3 of fair market value rent because of rent control. So what happens is landlords have been prosecuted in court. The word is spread across the city, and landlords who own the older buildings are selling them to developers who are tearing them down and putting new in buildings. Now, when you're used to paying $400 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, you can't afford a $1,400 a month apartment. So the city has to reach out to these landlords, stop prosecuting them over minor code violations like peeling paint and helping them stay in business so more people don't end up in the street. We've lost 200,000 apartments to the wrecking ball in the last 15 years because of Mercedes Marquez.
The next speaker is Ira Belgrade, followed by Marisol Vieira. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Ira Belgrade, and I have a fully up-to-code illegal accessory dwelling unit in an R1 zone in Councilman Rue's district. This unit has been helping me pay my mortgage and keep my family in our home of 18 years, while also providing high-quality below-market housing in Los Angeles. My unit and many more like it should be approved without the burdensome process of applying for a variance. And AB 1866 says I shouldn't have to. I believe that my unit is exactly the type of unit the legislature was envisioning when they wrote AB 1866. I shouldn't have to pay the city $15,000 for variance fees and be subject to public hearings and public scrutiny, especially when I have the support of my abutting homeowners and the support of my homeowners association. If the city of Los Angeles is going to make a dent in the housing shortage, the city should start by helping, not hindering people like me. I urge the City Council to start thinking out of the box on how to make AB 1866 work in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Marisol Vieira.
Yes. Good afternoon, Ms. Martinez, and everybody sitting here on the panel. I just wanted to bring something up to everybody's attention. As everybody was sitting here talking about the homelessness problems that we're having here in the city of LA, somebody here orchestrated the sanitation department to go and tow all the houses that Elvis Summers built. How are we supposed to come up with a solution while we're all sitting here and talking about it? All the little houses that were built off the 110 freeway are being towed right now and speaking. I'm really upset. I'm a taxpayer. This guy put in a lot of money to build these little houses. Obviously, this is something that we're trying to resolve. So if that's the case, why are they being towed? I don't know who orchestrated these shenanigans, but this is ridiculous. This is so hypocritical for somebody to do this at this point. We're sitting here talking about homelessness while your city is towing these little houses that are off the 110 freeway. Now, all those people are laying on the side of the road with all their stuff. So who's going to fix that problem? Huh?
Thank you. That concludes public comment. Members, are there any announcements?
And Madam President, Council has motions for posting and referral.
Posted and referred.
Announcement, Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Price.
The Economic Development Committee will meet at 1:45. 1:45, Economic Development. Thank you. 10th floor.
What else is before us, Madam Clerk? Mr. O'Farrell, did you have an announcement? Anyone else? Any announcements? Seeing none, can we all please rise for adjourning motions? To my right, are there any adjourning motions? Mr. Roop?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today I'd like to adjourn in the memory of Edwin Kahn, who passed away February 5th at the age of 93. And I know the County of Los Angeles is also doing an adjournment today. He's the husband of our good friend Mariko Kahn, who's the former APCON, Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council's former president. Edwin was born on June 3rd, 1922 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to Helen and Ted Kahn. Ed grew up in Los Angeles and graduated from Fairfax High School, UCLA, and UC Berkeley. At the outbreak of World War II, he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Force and served as a B-24 bomber pilot in the 89th Air Force and as an Air Force flight instructor. After the war, Ed served as a registered professional engineer and licensed general contractor. He retired after 40 years as a real estate developer and as president of Kahn Construction Company, Contractors and Engineers. He had a commercial pilot's license and served as a docent at the original Museum of Flying in Santa Monica. Ed was a member of the Masons, the Scottish Rites, the Shriners, the Commemorative Air Force, the Air Force Association, and the American Society of Civil Engineers. Ed is survived by his wife and best friend, Mariko, sons Greg and Winston, and daughter Julia, stepdaughters Pam Kroshar and Andrea Lusgarten, stepbrothers Mitchell Barnow and Dale Leninger, and his stepchildren Shelby Powell, Kimberly Kroshar, Brandon, and Rachel Lusgarten. In lieu of flowers, please send donations to Perfect Pet Rescues at P.O. Box 24099, Los Angeles, California 90024, where Ed and Mariko rescued their beloved Maya and Corey, or to the Asian Pacific Counseling Services at 8616 La Tierra Boulevard, Suite 200, Los Angeles, California 90045. Thank you, and may all our thoughts and prayers be today with the family and friends of Edwin Kahn. May you rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Root. Any other adjourning motions? Seeing none, that concludes our meeting. Our meeting is adjourned. Have a good afternoon.
LA City View, Channel 35.
We now join our scheduled program in progress.
Held by a solid fuel rocket motor is released from a special opening on top of the fuselage. 3 Kevlar straps connect the parachute to the airframe and help slow the aircraft, guiding it through a level descent. Although the parachute system already has 155 saves with ultralight aircraft, the first save in a general aviation plane came in October of 2002, with the aircraft suffering little damage and the pilot walking away from the crash with no injuries at all. So, Lisa, is this parachute system just for new aircraft, or can it be retrofitted on older planes?
Parachute system is